YouTube, something special today that I usually like to do and I used to do a lot around 3 months ago. This is going to be a response video. I usually make response videos with other channels. I did that with Steve Shaw, with Team 3 Alpha, and I always make sure to get their approval before I use their names. Understand also that I will do the same thing with comments that you guys post if they're interesting enough and if they're in opposition with what I believe. This is why if you don't agree with what I say, I always encourage you to either make a video or write a well-written message so that I can respond to it. So, on my video about discipline and work ethic not being genetic traits, I have a subscriber, Conrad, who wrote a long message explaining why he disagreed with me. I love opposing viewpoints, lifestyle. Why? Because you can always learn from people who don't see as you do, right? So, Conrad, si tu regardes, merci beaucoup de ton message. I'm going to have to translate because the message was in French, but that shouldn't be a problem. So we're going to go through it and I'm going to respond point by point because he mentioned a lot of things that I had in mind but I couldn't mention because the video would have been an hour long. And this is going to be the way I see life. I personally am someone who thinks that with determination, with mental strength, and with efforts, you can accomplish anything. I understand that there are limitations, but in my opinion, a lot of people create those limitations in their mind. And there is nothing I dislike more than the black pill. People who despair, people who give up. I have no kindness in my heart for that type of people. I feel pity for them. If you give up, I'm going to try and get you back on your feet so that you can live your life as a winner, but some people you cannot help. So in this video, I'm going to try and answer some of the rebuttals that he provided, and I'm going to try and defend my position, which is that discipline and work ethic are not genetic traits. You can develop them. Just in passing, I have nothing against Conrad, of course. He's a long-time subscriber of the channel. That's just the way he sees life, and this is fine. Everyone can live life the way they want. But if with this video I can convince you a little bit, Conrad, then I would consider myself the winner. Okay. He speaks about determinism, and he says that you can only accomplish your potential if there is potential in the first place. He phrases it much more elegantly though, because French is the language of love, so of course our literature is vastly superior. I don't agree with that. Why? Because in essence, you cannot know your potential if you don't work. A potential that is never revealed is a potential that never existed, if you think about it. How many people out there think they have bad genetics, but in reality they just never worked the muscle group? Look at me. I thought I had bad genetics for lats. I thought I had high insertions for lats. Turns out I just didn't know how to train them because I think I have decent genetic for lats and they're going to keep growing. It was my own fault. But if I had never found the right way to train them, I would still be telling myself that I don't have potential. He says that yes, no one is born a champion and that people who are born champions still need to work, but you cannot develop the potential to be a champion if it wasn't there in the first place. And that's true. The fact of the matter is people who end up breaking world records, people who end up winning Olympic gold medals, they are super gifted genetically, they are incredibly hard workers, and they have the best type of environment to develop these things. If you have one of the three traits that is at an impossibly high level, you can even trump some of the others. There are cases of people who have godlike talents who don't need to work at all because their talent is so high that it makes up for the fact that they don't work hard or that they have bad environments. But it's these are the genetic freaks of the genetic freaks. It's super rare. And he tells me that saying that nothing can be accomplished without genetics is an abusive use of that logic, but it's just as abusive to say that anything can be solved with the force of will and with the strength of your mind. I understand where he's coming from. I understand that people who might have been gifted a terrible hand in life, people who were born with a handicap, people who might have been born ugly, who are being told, oh, just develop a personality, bro. I understand that it doesn't sound, it's not pleasant to hear, especially when it comes from people who are gifted by nature. I understand that. My point of view is this. If you are not gifted, are you better off just giving up immediately and saying, well, I'm not gifted regardless, so why even care? Or are you better off actually trying? Some people will tell you, well, it's going to help you because that way you won't lose time. You won't waste time on something that you won't be a champion at. But if you apply that logic to everything in life, you're never going to use time for anything. So you're just going to be one of these guys that is just full of despair because life isn't taking them anywhere because they've basically decided that no application of their will is going to result in beneficial gains. This is why I always encourage people to train their mind and go hard. If you fail, you fail. I mean, I've failed so many times at so many sports. I've been destroyed at judo. I've been crushed at swimming meets. I've been I felt true despair playing basketball because some people were just naturally better than me. I'm still going because that's what life is. You keep going. And Conrad says that in a given sport, every single champion will have an hormonal and physiological profile that is identical. Not because the sport made them develop that, but because only the people who get that type of profile will be able to make it in the sport. I don't agree. I don't agree. Why? Because that would be like saying, well, if you want to be good at basketball, you need to be as tall as possible. That's not necessarily true. It's true that the average height in the NBA is 6'6", and that if you're 5'4", you will never make it in the NBA. But there are people who are below 5'5" who made it in the NBA. There are people below 6 feet who make it in the NBA. Why is height beneficial for basketball? Because you're trying to put a ball in a hoop that is 10 feet off from the ground. So the closer you are from that, the easier it is to put it inside, and the easier it is to bash a ball that comes from that. There are other variables like the fact that if you're a point guard and you're too small and you cannot see on top of the heads of people, how are you going to deliver the ball? It's not possible. That being said, you have players who are smaller, who are better. Look at Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan wasn't a 7'5" freak of nature. He was super tall. He was 6'6", but he was the greatest player of all time. After that, you have, of course, freaks of nature like LeBron James, who do have all of the beneficial traits that make him a beast at basketball. But what I'm saying is that just because you have those traits does not mean you will make it, and just because you don't have them doesn't mean you will not make it. As an example, when I played football, the most dangerous guy on the defensive squad was a kid who was maybe, I want to say 5'7". He was 150-ish, that's it. Getting tackled by that guy felt like being ran over. Like you were being hit by a, what's the name of that thing? A goat, the big goats with the big horns. That guy broke face masks because he hit so hard. He didn't have a gifted body, but he had the spirit. And in my opinion, that's where my personal opinion on the matter lays. That spirit is not genetic. You can develop it. He says that, as I said, to become a champion in a sport, you need genetics, you need hard work, and you need drugs. He's right. That being said, I also want to sort of move the discussion on a different field. Why are you trying to become a champion? Is that your life goal? I personally don't train to become a champion. I know I will never be a champion bodybuilder. I don't care. What I want is I want to push my body to the limits. If those limits are mediocre, then so be it. Those are my limits, right? But I will never stop pushing because I will meet my limits when they close my coffin. That's when I will stop. Before that, I will keep struggling and I'm never gonna stop. I think it's the issue with too many people. They start a sport and they immediately shoot for the stars. They're like, I'm gonna be the next big thing. Why don't you just try to be as good as you can? And if that leads you to becoming a world record holder, then great. But the thing is, 99.9% of people are not going to be that great. And what happens then? Oh, well, because I didn't get that, then I'm just going to give up. This is the issue with giving yourself too high of a goal. It's nice to have a goal, but don't give yourself a deadline. Don't think, oh, I need that in a year. Have an ideal and work towards that ideal. And if you get there, you get there. Cool. I can tell you that once you get there, your ideal will have moved further up the path because you will always want more and more. But that's, in my opinion, the healthy way to approach it. So for me, that's not a good argument because you don't need to be a world champion to be accomplished and feel good with what you do in the gym. And he also says that if you don't have the three elements, you can never become a champion because some people will use the three of them. I don't necessarily agree either. I've always found that if you have insane talent, if you don't work hard, even if you're not on drugs, you can surpass people who work hard. Working hard and drugs are sort of, they're inferior. I know it's not something people like to hear, but someone who has absolutely no talent can work as hard as they want. They will never be the best at a sport. They can be as good as they can be, which is what you should be worried about, but they never be as good. Some people can take grams and grams of drugs and never get anywhere. He says, as far as discipline, and whether or not it is caused by your genetic, by your environment, or by causality, he says that he doesn't know. But he does say that he thinks it's not as easy as I said. He says that he read a study that says that lactic acid accumulates in muscle at different rates based on the different type of physiological profiles between sportsmen. And that's an interesting point that is related to genetics. It's not related to discipline. But I get why he's saying that. If you run and your muscles start burning and the guy next to you doesn't have that burn, in a sense, he is artificially more disciplined than you because he doesn't feel the pain. And therefore, you could ask yourself, well, doesn't that mean that the strength of will is genetic? Because in truth, we are going through the same task, but he's not suffering as much. So this, in a sense, is, as I said, artificially boosting his discipline. I think that's a very good question, and I will relate it to lifting weights. Let's say someone had the ability to do super high reps without pain, without the burn, without the fatigue, etc. They would still be subjected to the ability to recover, which in a sense people who don't accumulate lactic acid wouldn't be. But at the end of the day, the fact that your body sends you signals of pain is still something that is surmountable. What do I mean by that? Two people run side by side. The person who has no lactic acid is going to perform better. Okay, that's a genetic gift that they have. But as far as the pain that is being endured by the person who produced the lactic acid, that pain is 100% going to be something that you're going to have to fight with your spirit. It's going to also have a direct impact on your performance because it's going to send a message to your muscles that you should stop working as hard because you're already tired. But the actual stimulus in itself is something that, in my opinion, cannot be used to say that discipline is genetics. Because in truth, the first person, as I said before, is not subjected to any of that pain, So the discipline doesn't even come into play because they don't have to apply it. But he does say that from the outside perspective, it does look like the guy who doesn't produce the lactic acid had more will and strength of mind because they ran harder, they went faster. But the truth is they didn't have to go through as much pain. He says that it's not that he didn't have to use will, it's just that the threshold at which he needed to start using his will to keep pushing mattered. I'm going to use an example I used before to explain why I don't think that matters. It doesn't matter because in this example, you're comparing yourself to another person. And yes, let's say you somehow have a genetic mutation that makes it so that you feel insane amounts of pain when you get a pump. Your discipline will have to be super high for you to be able to compete with people who have normal pain tolerances. But if you think about it in a vacuum, what does it mean for you? It means that for you to get just mediocre results, you're going to have to develop insane discipline. I know some people don't like to hear that, but in my opinion, that is something that can be used to your advantage. Because in life, genetic traits like these ones don't apply to everything you do. So if you develop incredible discipline on the ability to lift the weight through the pain, then maybe you can also apply that. I'm being attacked. You can also apply that to your studies or your work. All of that is going to be something that your discipline that is now super developed and super strong is also going to apply. I think it's the issue also with the black pill and people who lose sight of their goal because they are despaired. Not everything in life is hinged on your physical abilities or your athletic abilities. And not everything in life is affected by your looks. I know it's shitty to say. I know you don't like to hear that. If you personally think you don't look good, and if the world is telling you don't look good, it's not something you want to hear. But being ugly doesn't stop you from working on yourself and from making you the best version of you. I know we would all want to be able to build a body or build a physique or an athletic ability that you can showcase to the world and get praise for it. I know, I'm the same. But I am saying that the ability to be happy with what you've built exists outside of that. And then, we're getting a little bit personal. I think I'm going to skip this. But he's basically using the same example. Some people are genetically subjected to higher amounts of pain, or their hormones are going to push them, for example, towards binge eating, and therefore they're going to have to develop higher levels of discipline to be able to get the same results. But as I said, that discipline will serve you in other areas of your life. I know it's awful to be told that, hey, if you want to be normal, you're going to have to develop insane discipline, but this is your life. It's either you do it or you don't and you despair and die. So the only thing for me, the only path is to do it. He also says, how do you quantify willpower? How do you compare two people and say that, oh, X has more willpower than Y? And again, he compares two people. I think that's the issue here. You cannot compare willpower to other people. It's a thing I do too, where I will tell you to work hard, but I will do my best not to compare it with me. I'm not going to tell you, oh, if you don't train 3 hours in the week, then you don't work hard. Be like me. No, your version of working hard will be different. But you, and only you know, if you actually pushed yourself. You cannot lie to yourself. That's the beauty and the sadness of human beings. Most people, even if they really cope, even if they develop tons of mechanisms to justify their shitty life, when they lay in their bed at night, they cannot lie to themselves. They know deep down the truth. You know if you've pushed yourself. You know if you're training hard. You know if you're sandbagging. So all of that doesn't matter. Don't try and compare with someone else. you can't quantify your willpower because you will eventually get to a point where it's maxed out, and when it's maxed out, willpower becomes discipline. Discipline is, I'm going to do this whether it rains, whether it's minus 20 degrees, whether it is so hot that I have to drink gallons of water to go through it, whether I'm in pain, I'm doing it. That's discipline. You transcended motivation. And once you get that, then you will be able to interact with people who also have that. And that's, I think, something that's missing from that message, in a sense, is that every single champion, or at least the people who push themselves, if they don't have the greatest genetics, they have that in common. They have insane discipline. And again, I'm sort of turning that argument on its head. They were not born with that discipline because the genetic traits that they got were potentially so bad that it was a cultural and psychological response to build that discipline. So it didn't exist in vitro, is what I'm saying. And then he keeps going and saying that, again, even if determination is not genetic, certain people will not have the ability to become Mozart or Arnold Schwarzenegger. Which is funny in a sense, because if you think about Arnold, he didn't have the greatest genetics for bodybuilding. He had a very large waist, his legs were underdeveloped, and in a sense, he started taking PEDs when he was 14. So he altered his genetics. He, in a sense, through discipline and through insane sacrifice, did just that. He made himself into Arnold by walking like a maniac. For Mozart, I understand where you're coming from. There are certain things, for example, like I don't know if I can translate that in English like this, but the absolute ear, the ability to recognize notes. Some people are born with that. That being said, you can train it. I knew someone who trained so hard that they eventually developed it. So you can make up shitty genetic with excellent discipline. It's just, as he says, you're going to have to start from here and work from here, and all of that was hard work through discipline, when someone might even be able to go through here with zero efforts and then need to develop the discipline from here. But with that same example, think about it. You needed the discipline from day one. And as I said, once discipline is developed, it's there for the rest of your life. That guy who got from here to here might never go here, because he went through all of that without having to work hard, and maybe he will never develop that discipline. I will make a video about it, but talent can be a double-edged sword. A lot of people who have too much talent just skim through life, but then when they meet their first roadblock, they quit because they never developed the ability to work. I've seen that times and times again with people who were academically gifted through birth, and then when they get into a school that's too hard, they quit because they don't have the ability to surmount that. So yet again, a proof that discipline can overcome a lot of things. And to finish, he says there's a distinction to be made between the existence of a truth or a conviction and the utilization of it that you can make. For example, he says, I don't have the genetic potential to become Arnold Schwarzenegger. It doesn't mean that you won't train. I agree with that 100%. It's like saying there are genetic predispositions for discipline, but it does not mean that I'm not going to do anything. Well, you say that, but a lot of people do. A lot of people who are black-pilled, a lot of people who gave up, use that. They say I have bad genetics, I'm not going to train. Discipline, oh, the new fad, discipline is a genetic trait. That explains why I don't have the discipline. Let me not just do anything. Discipline, you have to work on it. Whether you think it exists in you when you're born or not, you have to work on it. This is why people who are very gifted also need to work hard. And same thing for the Arnold example. I completely disagree with you, because the reason why the natural limit is so popular, the reason why natural standards are so low, is because people create roadblocks in their mind by telling themselves, I don't have the potential to be this, so I'm not going to be this. Look at me. Go into my transformation video, look at my arms when I was 18. My arms were the size of my wrist. Right? I had skinny spaghetti arms. If at that time I had looked at my arms and said, okay, I have no genetic potential, so I'm not going to train my arms, it would be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you say here that just because you don't have the potential to be Arnold doesn't mean that you're not going to train. But the truth of the matter is, it is. You might train, but you're not going to push yourself. And you exist in a French country like I used to, and if you go on the French YouTube, you know what I'm talking about, because the French YouTube is even worse than the American YouTube fitness. The idea that you have a genetic limit is so ingrained in people's mind that the vast majority of physiques are not impressive at all. Why? Because they've created artificial blockers in their mind that stops them from pushing the limit of their training, which is why it's so important to build a discipline and to build a mindset of never stopping. And again, you finish this by saying, you can be convinced of this truth and still do the best you can do with what I have. Don't do the best you can do. Faire de son mieux. No, you push through that. Because that always evolves. Because as you grow, as you become more muscular, your ability to push and push and push also evolves. I know that you know that, but I just want you to be able to tell that to yourself. You don't do your best. You kill it. That's how you grow. You kill it. And then you say that for you, and that's your opinion, and I respect it, a happy life and a life that is devoid of that existential dread is going to be at peace with yourself and do what you can with what you have. And you tell me that you're 5'8", so you'll never be a strong man, and that there are certain limitations that you will gladly accept and others that you won't. And then you apologize for the long message. Don't apologize. I'm going to finish on this too. This is personally not my mindset. I accept that it is yours, Conrad, but I personally cannot live my life like this. I don't care what my limits are, because I've never considered that I have limits. I know it sounds stupid, because there are certain things that of course I will never be able to do, but I don't even want to think about it, because I don't care. I think that's the issue with limits too. Why do you care? Why do you care how big your arm can get? Why do you care how much you can bench? Why don't you just do your max and see where it takes you? As I said, limits become blocker in your mind. So just don't even think about it. Just live your life like a champion, go out there and do what you have to do and see where it takes you. Don't even think about a end goal. Don't even think about a finish line, because there is none. But the issue with the finish line is that if you actually cross it, you're going to lose all of your discipline and motivation, because you just managed to do that. And even worse, if you tell yourself, well, the finish line that I would like to reach is here, but I'll never make it, you understand that you just destroyed your ability to actually apply yourself. And I'm going to finish on this example, and I don't know if it's relevant or not, but it's an example I really like. Imagine a sport like a marathon. A marathon is already hard enough, but the good thing with a marathon is that you know exactly where the finish line is. You know that after X amount of miles, you're going to cross that line and you're going to get to stop. Bodybuilding, natural bodybuilding, in my opinion, and the pursuit of willpower, discipline, and the mastery of your body is a marathon without a finish line. You started running, you never know when you stop. In my opinion, people who think about natural limits, people who think that discipline is a genetic trait, all of these people are people who artificially created a finish line somewhere. And whether they realize it or not, they either crossed that line and stopped running and started either going backwards or just slowly walking, or because they have now that finish line in their mind, they can see where it is, and now that they're getting closer to it, because they're anticipating that they're coming to the end of their ropes, they're slowing down. So all of that means what? Whether genetic is going to have an impact on your discipline and your ability to apply yourself. It is my belief that outside of that genetic, completely ignoring your DNA, discipline can exist in anyone, and it can also not exist. It's up to you. You can either choose to develop it, or you can't. And again, this is never going to be proven scientifically, but it is my opinion. You can also be someone that eventually loses that discipline. But as long as you have it and you feed it, it is your most important ally. So that's going to be it for that video. Thank you again, Conrad, for your message. This is a format that I will do maybe once every few months, but I really like. And I do only if I see a good question. So keep them coming. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.